Friends, I am Anand Prakash from Delhi University, and today I will be talking about Marxist literary theory. I remember that last month that was, when I was talking about an important aspect of literature, then a response came from one of the viewers, and the response was that I should explain realism and magic realism. I'll come to that later in the course of this discussion, but today what was asked last time will be dealt with comprehensively. The topic being Marxist literary theory. Let me right in the beginning say that it's a vast subject and it can't be covered in 1, 2 or 3 discussions. What I can do is to introduce you to some of the general points that concern this topic, and I'll talk about each general point briefly to just give you a view of literature that is radically different from other views that exist simultaneously with it. Why do I call it a vast subject? I say this because Marxism as a theory of life, as a theory of human history, and as a theory of literature covers all aspects of life. For instance, it covers, as I have said already, history. History has been viewed from different angles, and generally people think that the kings, the queens, the great statesmen, it is they who make history. So most of the history uses what I call a chronological way of presentation. That is, this person came first, he or she introduced these policies, and then this person was succeeded by others who either adopted the old system of governance or introduced a new system. That is all right, but only to the extent that it provides information. But what Marxism does is that it views history from a specific angle, and that's why I say that there is a definite way in Marxism of viewing and understanding history. The other thing that this subject covers is that Marxism believes in the centrality of the human being. The human being, man or woman, the human being who is one of the species on this earth, that human being who has the capacity to think, to feel, to articulate, to use language, to write, and to communicate. And this human being, man or woman, always participates quite actively in life, even though other ways of looking at history do not give enough importance to this. So what I suggest is that under Marxism, it is the ordinary men and women, all men and women together in life, in society, contribute to the making of history and its patterns. So yes, the first thing is history, and the second is that this history is produced by men and women. The third thing that I say about Marxism, the aspect that it covers, is that it also considers quite importantly and quite seriously what is called culture. Now, culture has not been given the kind of importance that it deserves. Most of us think that culture is entertainment. Yes, culture is entertainment, but culture is more than that. And culture is also as important as other phases of life. In fact, if human life were to be lived with any kind of interest and enjoyment, that is possible only when you think of culture. So this kind of importance that Marxism gives to culture has to be studied very differently from other ways of looking at it. And one can say with a fair amount of confidence that it is culture that makes life in society enjoyable. If you merely worked to produce things, if you merely worked to move around and to govern, etc., then life would be very dull. It is culture which takes place during the day, in the morning, in the evening, on holidays, that provides what is called fulfillment to life. And the last is aesthetics. Now, culture is, of course, aesthetics, but in order to emphasize the idea of beauty in life, the word aesthetics is used. So there are certain principles, there are certain ways of understanding beauty, grasping beauty, and of creating beauty. And Marxism defines also aesthetics in a specific manner. The ordinary idea of culture is that, and aesthetics is that there are beautiful things such as rivers, such as trees, such as streams, such as fountains, such as the songs of birds, etc. They are all aesthetics. But so far as human life is concerned, aesthetics is more precise. Aesthetics is that particular experience which fills us with a sense of beauty. Therefore, yes, nature is a part of aesthetics, but nature by itself is not beautiful or ugly. It is the human being and the human being's eye, the human being's viewing of nature that finds beauty in nature and makes nature beautiful. And what makes a thing beautiful? How does it appeal to us in the sense of aesthetics? Aesthetically, that is what Marxism considers quite seriously. So this is the topic, and these different aspects of life in society and humanity are discussed with care and with serious engagement under Marxism. After introducing these four aspects of life that are covered under Marxism, I go to the next point, which can be which can start with the idea of defining Marxism. What is Marxism? That's the general query that can be made by anybody who hears this word for the first time. All of us, of course, want to know what is Marxism and how it is different from other isms as we use the term. Now, it's very interesting to see, that Marxism is not exactly an ism, and the father of Marxism, that is Karl Marx himself, would not very seriously use the word Marxism. He used the word, and that word is very important for the theory that he propounded, for the theory that in fact he discovered and invented in his own life. That theory is called actually historical materialism. And if somebody asks you what is Marxism, then your first answer should be Marxism is historical materialism. These are two terms. Historical is the adjective, materialism is the noun, and you have to define both. Let me say that some kind of materialism has always existed in life. Materialism, that which is matter-centered, which is reality-centered. All things in life, all aspects of nature, human life itself, the human body, all these are matter. And whatever relates to matter is material. And that if you want to think materially, giving enough importance to matter, matter means reality, then only you can evolve a theory. You can think of a theory that will put matter at the center of it. But then, materialism can be of different kinds. There are so many ways of understanding this matter, this reality of life, this body, this neighborhood, this society, this country, this geography, all the other aspects of nature. All these are matter. But what makes it historical is important under Marxism. So Marxism is not merely materialism. Marxism is not merely saying, that there is a human body and there is neighborhood and there is society and there is a state, etc. Marxism also believes in the idea of historical, which means that in history, that is 2000 years ago, 3000 years ago, 500 years ago, 100 years ago, there was a way of society being in a particular shape and form, and that shape and form later on changed. There are records available, and if you go to the 20th century now, 20th century ended only 7 years ago, 8 years ago, and you can go back to the middle of the 18th century. There are films available. If you go to the 19th century, 18th century and earlier, up to the time 2000 years or so, then there are paintings available, there are etchings available, there are figures available, etched in stone, etc., carved in stone, etc. And you can see from these things how human beings lived, how they looked, how they moved around, etc. And you will find that there is a great deal of difference between what human beings did 2000 years ago, 500 years ago, or what they do today. So this is historical. So there is a way in which history changes. It has a certain direction, and you can see that the direction has been that at least in the last 500 years, human history in Europe and in India and in the rest of the world has changed from a place, a system, etc., of life that was geared to meeting the requirements of a certain class, and this class constituted a very very small minority, and that things progressed in such a way that today you can think of feeding the whole humanity, treating the whole humanity in equal terms. So in a way things have changed definitively, certainly and visibly, from a time when only some people enjoyed and others worked for them, to the time today when all of us have the means to exist, survive and enjoy. So how this movement can be traced from one point of time to another, this is a consideration that history goes into. So historical materialism is the changes in matter in history from a certain point of view, from one point to another, and if you go into the reasons why these changes took place, then it becomes historical materialism. Now when you define historical materialism or Marxism like this, then there are three things that you have to consider seriously. One is action. Now action appears very simple, and all of us act in life, all of us have actions in life, but you realize that there are people who think that action is not required, thinking is required. Particularly in India, there have been a large number of thinkers and who say thinking is important, and in fact many of them ask you not to act very seriously because according to these thinkers, whatever you do in life is Maya, and that thought is important, and thought is the idea, and that actually the whole world is a kind of illusion, it's a kind of Maya, and why participate it? You go into the religious texts, you go into the other texts, and they will mostly tell you that life is unreal, and that ideas are real, and that certain forces are real, and therefore do not discuss life very seriously. Now Marxism reverses this, turns it upside down, and says that action is important, and this world is real, it is not Maya at all, and that if you consider it as real and you think about it as real, then you must act in order to realize certain aspects of reality which otherwise will not come to any shape. The second thing which is connected with action in Marxism is intervention. Action is a very general word. Action means that you must act, but then how should you act? To what purpose should you act? What direction you should assume, and why you should assume? All this requires some kind of mental effort. So you decide first to act, then find out how you can act, and then later on in the course of finding out how you can act and acting, you also go into your own ways and methods, examine whether you have been doing the right thing or the wrong thing, or the right thing in the wrong manner, etc. And that your final goal is to intervene effectively and successfully in life. So that is called intervention. So Marxism urges upon citizens of a society to decide to act and to intervene in society, not to remain away from it, not to remain neutral to it, but to take part, to participate in society, and to the extent possible change it so that more and more human beings on the earth can become happy. The third thing is that this change that I have talked about, this intervention that I have talked about, is raised onto a higher plane under Marxism. And this higher plane is that what has been observed in life is that things change and they move in a certain direction, and if they were small yesterday, they become big today, tomorrow they become still bigger. Now, this kind of progression in history, for instance, there is a, let's say, a number of the middle class people in India in the 20th century, early 20th century, and that in India you might have 50,000 or a lakh people who are, working in government offices, working in other areas of life, teaching, that there are doctors, etc. They are small in number. Later on you find that after 50 years or so, according to government policies that give more importance to these things, I'm just giving you a working figure, this figure of 50,000 can become 1 lakh. After another 10 years it becomes 1,50,000, and so on and so forth. So things progress like this. The same way in medical science, you know that there is a time when there is only one kind of a doctor, but later on you start having specialists, and there comes still a time when even the specialist work is divided into further specializations, and for even a very small area of knowledge you have a specialist. So what I'm saying is that things keep growing, things keep multiplying in life, and this increase of good things in life, of useful things in life, is always good for life, because it makes it more and more comfortable and easy, and therefore this should be kept up. Now, this increase in numbers in different areas of life, this can be called evolution. Things improve. Earlier they were primitive, they became fine, finally they became much more fine. So from crude and simple, primitive, to the fine, there is a kind of evolution. It is moving in that direction. But then Marxism, recognizing the process of evolution, also says that at a particular point of time things increase so much that finally they become their opposite. Now this is slightly difficult to understand, but let me explain. For instance, in India's history, that's the subject that we can relate to much better than the other subjects in knowledge. India's history, modern history, starts from a definite point in the 20th century, when people become aware of the presence of an Indianness that feels violated by British imperialism. There are very few people at that time. I'm talking about the late 19th century and early 20th century. Most of us at that point of time realize that there are Britishers who are here to stay, who will run our government, etc. But in the beginning of the 20th century, what you see is that there are certain people who think that these Britishers have no role to play here. In fact, they are intruding upon our privacy, they are intruding upon our dignity and integrity, and that we can do without them. Now, most of the people in the 20th century beginning do not think so. They think we can't do without the Britishers. But some people have started thinking along those lines that this is possible, that we can do with ourselves and on our own, and that we don't require outsiders to govern us. Now this number starts growing of people who believe that we can govern ourselves. So in 1920s, you have a whole lot of people who think that we can govern ourselves. What about 1930s? In 1930s, there are still larger number of people who say this, and this finally changes the entire view and turns the world upside down so far as India is concerned. And in 1942, a call is given by the Congress led by Mahatma Gandhi, and the call is Quit India. Now you could not say this in the first or the second decade of the 20th century, but in the early 40s, in 1942 to be precise, you can say, please leave us and we'll govern ourselves. Now this is a total reversal of what was said earlier, and this is called revolution. And after this slogan is given by the Indians, led by Gandhiji, to convey to the British imperialists that they should leave the country, it takes only 5 years for India to turn the entire thing upside down and to become an independent country which does not require the so-called services of British imperialism. So this is revolution. So what I'm saying is that Marxism talks about all these things, and that there has to be action, there has to be intervention, there has to be change. This change is of two kinds. First, things evolve, they grow, they progress, and finally when the progress and evolution is of a great magnitude, then things become totally uncertain for a short time, they become very intense, and then there is a revolution, and after the revolution, the world is not the same. So this is the way in which Marxism, the Marxist theory, has to be understood, the theory that tells human beings to keep evolving in the right direction, in the direction of more and more of human fulfillment, so that finally you can completely reverse the order and bring about what is called a revolution. Now, when you look at life and at history this way, then these considerations become important also for writers. What should writers say about society? What should they say about themselves? What should they say about the characters whom they represent in their short stories, in their plays, in their novels? What should they say in their poems regarding life, whether life remains static, it is always the same, it is permanent, it never changes, etc., or whether they say that life changes. Now there will be in all periods of time people who would say that life remains the same and truths are universal, but there are others in India and in the rest of the world who would say that life changes, and it changes so much that what appeared wrong earlier is right today, and what appeared right earlier has become wrong today. So these tendencies coexist. But Marxism thinks that those who believe in change, etc., those who believe in revolution, it is they who contribute to the growth of values, human-centered values, much better than the others. So when you look at society and your history this way, then writers are compelled also to re-examine their own views and ideas. Now initially, when one is born, when one is going to the school, when becomes an adolescent, when becomes youth, at that point of time, one is borrowing ideas from one's parents and from one's neighborhood schools and textbooks. But when you grow up, when you become a youth, and when you start writing, then in that writing, you tend to examine your own beliefs, your own understanding of life, because when you write, then you are face to face with certain things which you otherwise not aware of. For instance, you say one thing and you see something else in life, and some kind of a clash occurs between what you generally believe in and what you see in life, and this clash then is mentally sorted out by the writer. And when does this clash get sorted out? Is when a writer actually writes, when a writer actually composes a poem, when a writer is actually writing a play. Then in that course, this writer allows different ideas to come into the book, to come into the work, and then this clash sometimes compels the writer to change one's own opinion. And this is the creative process that takes place in literature. And if there are times in history when a writer lives, for instance, when Premchand lives in the 1920s and 30s, then those are the times when a large number of people are active, mobilizing the society along lines of anti-imperialism, so that the national movement is growing from strength to strength. Can a writer ignore such a trend in one's life, is the question. I raise the question, I ask you to ponder over it, whether when there are pressures in life, when there are movements going on in life, can a writer ignore them? You should think about it. So far as I am concerned, so far as my view goes, I think that a writer has to keep one's eyes and ears open, and a writer always works under pressures that are there in the environment in which he lives. So that way, this is what a writer is supposed to think of while writing, and in any case, it is necessary for a writer to take into consideration the ideas, the clashes, the struggles that take place in one's environment. From this Marxist view of looking at things, now I come to the theory of literature, literary theory, that is. The first point was Marxism, Marxist literary theory. In that first was Marxism, and now I come to literary theory. Now, Marx has explained in some detail as to how this society in which we live is constituted. And a writer must know this, because a writer would be talking about characters, human beings, etc., who live actually, who think, who feel, and who act. And therefore it is very essential for a writer to understand the processes of life in general. And Marx provides us the answer to the question as to how life sustains itself, how a society sustains itself stabilizes itself, how it goes on, and that you must know the very process, the very mechanism that works behind our life. Therefore, he is using two words to explain the nature of life in which we live. And these two words are, and you have to consider them very seriously, these two words are base and superstructure. Now, base, all of us know, base is the particular thing on which a building stands. It is the structure of the building, it's the frame of the building, and that frame of the building is very important. You don't see generally the frame of the building. You generally do not see the roots. You generally do not see the base of the building. But then all of us know that if the base were not there, if the frame were not there, then the building would fall. So this base is what is to be considered as important in life, and you should examine this base again and again in order to see how it works and how it affects us. Now, this base is not, of course, it's a metaphor. It's a metaphor of the building that Marx had in mind, but consider this only as a metaphor and not literally. So what is the base in society? This is the question. Now, society is not a building. Society is a very complex mechanism, and different people will say different things about it, about the nature of society. But so far as Marx is concerned, the society's base is what is called economic production. That the way you produce things under economy, under political economy, he uses the word political economy, it is that way that your society is there to exist. So if you take out the base, as you take out as you take away the frame of the building, as you take away the base of the building, then the building falls. In the same way, if you remove economy from social life, then society itself crumbles. It can't stand there for a week, for 10 days or so, because all of us need food, all of us need all the facilities, all of us need transport, all of us need governance, etc. And in fact, why week? Even one day, it's very difficult. Even for a day, it is very difficult to sustain society without this economic base. This is very important. Do we know how important it is? Now, we have never discussed this question. Economists also do not discuss this question. They only tell you how things are produced. But then, they do only a very shoddy job of it, because they have already decided to talk as specialists, not as people who understand the nature and the role of economy in society. But so far as Marx was concerned, he said that the economics of a country is always political. Now, this is something that we don't understand generally. We think that economics has nothing to do with politics. But then he said that actually economic production is always handled politically by a system, and that this political economy, this economic base has to be understood in two ways. One, that things are produced, but they are not produced in vacuum. You don't go to a place and start producing it and then you come back. For you to produce, there must be a system, and under that system, for instance, some people have to buy the raw materials, some people have to collect people, then they have to put them under a roof, and there you have to work in the factory. Then whatever you produce has to be taken to the market. There are other people in the market who buy, and they also sell, and then buying and selling requires gives you some profit. That profit comes back to the factory, and then you produce still more. So it's a whole system, and in fact, factories themselves, as parts of the economic unit, cannot remain for a long time unless there is agriculture, and agriculture is not in the cities where factories operate. Agriculture is there in the villages, in the far-flung villages. So villages are compelled to produce things as raw materials for the factory in the town. Therefore, what you see is that some kind of compulsion takes place not merely in the field of production in the city, but also in the village. And that this general system, this is so very unified that it has to be understood in its totality and not separately. So this is what the base is. So the base is that there are methods of production. The methods of production, let us say, are as in the factory or as in the village. And the second thing, and which most of us do not consider at all, is that there is also a relation of production. A relation of production is very important. Relation of production means that there are people who invest. They arrange the money, they invest, and they buy the human labor. They ask them to come to the factories, that they would give them salaries, and after they have given them the salaries, then they would send them back in the evening, just with the salary, with nothing else. And that these people will come again the next day, and once again they will be given work, they will be given money for that work, and they will be sent back. Now, what is the relation in production? This is very important, and if you go into it, you realize that there are people who have the money and who employ people, and there are others who do not have the money and they get employed. So there are, in such a system, in the economic system, particularly under capitalism, there are people who are employers and there are others who are employed. And unless the employers and employed are there in society, you can't work the system. So this is the economic relation, that somebody has to employ and somebody else has to be employed, and that the employers and employees, both of them work together under a relationship which is of the employer and the employee, the master and the slave, and that this is how the system works. Is it possible under capitalism to remove the relationship of the employer and employee, and that the employee himself becomes the employer also? This is the question, and one has to consider this, because this is the question that directly faces us. India today is a country which has employers, which has people who control economy. India also is a country which has a large number of employees, and they are controlled, their life is controlled by people who pay them salaries. Now, is it possible that the employees themselves would become employers also? That they will evolve a system in which all the resources will be pooled by themselves, and that they will appoint managers from among themselves, and that what employees want, that will be produced and that will be distributed the way they want it. Is it possible? And you have to ask this question and from yourself and get the answer. But the question definitely stands that yes, perhaps it is possible. It can be tried. Maybe there are countries in the world, other countries in the world, where there are no employers, where the society itself is the employer, and the society is treating all workers equally, not like employees, not like slaves, but like equal citizens. So anyway, this is the question that is faced before us, and this concerns what Karl Marx called the base. How should a writer look at one society? Should he or she look at the society constituting a base or not? If one consider the society as constituting the base, then your writing will be of one kind. If you do not believe in this, then your writing is going to be of another kind. So if you consider the base as a reality, then you become, let's say, a writer who is inspired by the idea of Marxism. But then economic production and social relations of production are only one aspect of life. After all life is not covered by your being an employee or an employer. There are many things in life which work, let's say, away from where production takes place. Production takes place, as I already told you, either in the factory, in the city, or on the land, in the villages. But life is also outside the factory and outside the land. Life is there away from it also. For instance, in this particular system of the base, you do not have any role given to the parliament. But there is a parliament. Now parliament is very away from, very distant from a factory, and parliament is very distant also from the land in the village where agriculture takes place. What is the role of the parliament? You also have a whole system in all countries where there are lawyers, there are judges, there are armies, there are the police, and it's a huge structure. What is the role of the structure? This has to be considered. So Karl Marx said that this is a structure which should be called partly superstructure, because this is based on what he said, the base, and that all these, whether it's the parliament, whether it's the judiciary, etc., all have to work under a constitution, and this constitution is always there to provide protection and stability to the base. So the job of the parliamentarians, the job of all these other people is confined to giving stability and preservation to the system that works in their midst. But there are problems. You know that there are discussions at every level in society, and many discussions take place in the parliament and in the social field of politics where these parliamentarians are elected. What do they talk in their speeches to the ordinary masses outside the parliament and through the parliament, inside the parliament? This is the question. And my answer is that these politicians, they are all the time telling you one thing and its opposite, and that a kind of debate is generated all the time, and we are listening to them either on the television or through the radio or outside when they come to talk to us, address rallies, etc. And some kind of a struggle of ideas is going on in our minds all the time. Now it is this discussion, it's a very important thing. Parliament is one of the most important institutions. Judiciary is one of the most important institutions in the society. These institutions compel us to go into different areas of life and to see how interests clash, and how that clash can be partly or fully averted. So this is called superstructure. It's an area which is away from the factory, this is an area which is away from the land, and this is an area where people discuss their problems of life and they want to find solutions to their life, and that is what is called superstructure. But then superstructure is political and other legal superstructure, but then there is something more to a superstructure. For instance, philosophical, moral and religious superstructures. Now religion will always say that it concerns only God, but you will find that religions differ. There is a 19th century way of looking religiously, there is a 20th century way of looking religiously at things, etc. Religion also changes. And what changes does religion carry? Well, what changes does philosophy carry? These are the questions that can also be raised under this question. And one believes that the religious preachers, when they talk to people, then they take examples from life. Where when philosophers talk about their philosophy, then also they take examples from life, etc. And because of which you can say that the philosophers and the religious people and even moralists, they also are all the time keeping the base in mind, and they are changing their views from time to time. And the last point, and in this particular aspect of discussion, is culture. What is culture, and how is culture related to the base? Now, you cannot see any direct connection between the artists and the factory, the artists and the land, the artists and the employers and the employees. But if you look closely, then you find that art also, in a way, presents a picture of the reality in which we live. And this reality has the base. So if there are factories in a let's say in a city, and if there is agriculture going on, the work under agriculture is going on in the village, etc., then the artist gives a picture of the city and the village in one's works, in one's drama. One picks up characters from the village who work on the land, who either govern the system of agriculture in the village, and that these people, as they are involved with agriculture, then they find place in a work of art, and the writer is compelled to look at it critically. So even culture and literature, they are concerned with what Marx called the base. And if you read the novels of Premchand, if you read the novels of Yashpal, if you read the novels of Ranki Raghav, these are the examples from Hindi writing. And in English, if you are reading in the 19th century, the novels of George Eliot, the novels of before George Eliot, Jane Austen, the novels of Hardy later on, then you will find that all these people are talking about life in England, and they are very directly, very clearly showing the changes that are taking place on the plane of life. For instance, Jane Austen in the early 19th century talks about the small town and the village, and Charles Dickens, for instance, in the middle of the 19th century, he is talking about the factory life. Hardy talks about agriculture and the growing weakness and emaciation of the peasant in the village. So you cannot say that artists are not concerned with the base. They are concerned with the base, and if they are showing pain in life that is caused by the base and its aspects, then of course you know that artists don't like the present world and they want to change it. Then I come to the last point, and as we move to the close of this discussion, this is the question that I referred to in the beginning of my talk, that there is a kind of realism and there is a kind of magic realism in today's writing. Now, what does realism mean, and what has caused the emergence in the 20th century of magic realism? Now, first I'll take up realism in literature, and this is a Marxist concept again. Now, the writer under Marxism would like to present things realistically in one's works in order to connect the reader with the reader's own reality. This is what realism, and that if you know what is reality, then you start thinking about it, and then you realize that this reality should be understood along a pattern. And reality is not merely what you see. Reality is not what you merely hear, what you touch. These are just superficial aspects of reality. Reality is that which is working behind what you see. There are certain things which work behind. For instance, if a worker is not happy at the workplace, then why is he not happy? Maybe he is not happy because at home there is a young man, his son, who is not getting a job, and there is a daughter who is to be married, and the marriage cannot be arranged. So this person bears the strain of his family problems when he comes back to the place where he works. So these things have to be understood, that reality is not what you see. Reality is also that is working somewhere else, and that there is a connection between that reality which cannot be seen and the one that you can see it. If you can connect the two, if you connect the home with the workplace, if you can connect the village with the city, if you can connect the politics of the country with the economics of the country, if you can connect, let's say, the interests of international powers with India, etc., if you can connect all of them together, then of course you will have a different view of your life, and that is what is called realism. So realism is not exactly what you see around you. Realism is that which works along a pattern for some time in life, and that's how it has to be understood in connection. Then I discuss in 1 minute magic realism as I come to the close of my lecture. Now, magic realism is called magic realism for the same reason that realism is called the connection between the visible and the invisible. Now, in the 20th century particularly, what people have realized is that many things cannot be understood, because the causes of the things that you face are happening 1,000 miles away from here. That is one. There is geographical distance between the causes and the effect. The other thing is that sometimes the causes are rooted in the 15th century, and the results can be seen today. The third is that the causes are in the minds and the effect is on the body. Now, these causes cannot be easily shown. So what the writer does is that the writer uses fantastic images. Images, where a bird starts talking, where a man starts flying, where there is a train, which stands still and moves into a village without, moving on the rails. Now, all these unexpected things, they start happening in reality, and the writer's purpose is to show that the direct connection cannot be established, but a connection is there, and some kind of shock therapy is arranged, and some kind of work that will make your interest much more so will be taken. I finish by referring at the end to the trends of comedy and epic in modern literature. So this will come under Marxist literary theory, because today Marxism believes that optimism is required in life, not pessimism. You can't say that there is no hope in life. You have to say that human beings, when they get together, then they can change this world. So the 20th century literature, particularly of the Marxist variety, it always gives you hope, and it tells you that you can make a beautiful world with your collective effort. So with this, I end this discussion, and I hope you have understood a few points that I made. And if there are any questions, then you can send them later. You can straight away ask me. Thank you.